The first twinge hit me as I was setting up for the evening shift at Bellini's. Nothing dramatic, just a dull ache that made me pause while arranging wine glasses. I pressed my palm against the small of my back, exhaled slowly, and continued working. 7 months of practice had made me an expert at hiding pain. "Elena, we need more napkins for table 12, Marco called from across the dimly lit restaurant floor, his voice barely audible over the soft jazz and murmur of conversation. "Coming," I answered, my voice steadier than I felt. Bellini's was the kind of upscale Italian restaurant where the wealthy came to be seen without being obvious about it. Crystal chandeliers cast a golden glow over dark wood and cream tablecloths. The air was perfumed with garlic, fresh basil, and expensive cologne. I'd been lucky to get hired here 6 months ago when I desperately needed the money and the flexible hours. The manager had been surprisingly understanding about hiring a visibly pregnant woman, though I'd told him my husband was away on military duty, a lie that seemed kinder than the truth. I slipped through the kitchen doors, grabbing a stack of freshly pressed napkins. Another twinge, sharper this time. 36 weeks and 4 days pregnant. Not yet. Please, not yet. I still had almost a month to figure things out. The weight of my secret felt heavier than my swollen belly. I'd managed to conceal my condition from most people in my life with loose clothing and careful scheduling. Even here at work, my black uniform and apron disguised my shape reasonably well in the dim lighting. But time was running out, and I still had no plan for what came next. I pushed through the swinging door back into the dining room, napkins balanced on my arm when I felt it. A subtle shift in the atmosphere. The maitre d' stood straighter, the bartender's hands stilled mid-pour. Even the patrons seemed to lower their voices, as if on cue. He had arrived. I'd never seen him up close before, only glimpsed him from a distance on the 3 previous occasions he'd dined here during my shifts. Everyone called him Mr. Russo, though whispers in the kitchen suggested his first name was Dante. He owned half the waterfront district, according to Marco, though nobody seemed to know exactly what his business entailed. The staff treated his rare appearances with a mixture of terror and excitement. Today, he'd entered with his usual entourage, 2 broad-shouldered men in dark suits who scanned the room before he took a step inside. A third man waited by the door, eyes constantly moving. His security moved with practiced precision, checking sight lines and exits before one of them nodded, allowing their boss to proceed to his usual corner table. I kept my head down, focusing on delivering the napkins to table 12. From the corner of my eye, I could see him, tall and imposing in what was clearly a custom suit, dark hair slicked back, his jawline sharp enough to cut glass. He moved with the confidence of someone who had never needed to question his place in the world. "Elena," Marco hissed, appearing suddenly beside me. "Mr. Russo's table, now." "What? But that's not my section tonight." "Sophia called in sick. Just do it, please." Marco's expression left no room for argument. My heart hammered against my ribs as I made my way across the room. Another pain radiated across my abdomen, making me pause for the briefest moment before I could compose myself. I approached the table with my eyes lowered respectfully. "Good evening, gentlemen. Welcome to Bellini's." My voice sounded thin and unfamiliar to my own ears. That was when I felt it. His gaze. I hadn't directly looked at him yet, but I could feel his attention like physical pressure against my skin. Slowly, I raised my eyes. Dante Russo was studying me with an intensity that made my throat go dry. His eyes were so dark they appeared almost black in the restaurant's dim lighting, set under straight brows and a face that would have been classically handsome if not for the scar that ran from the corner of his right eye down to his jaw. It didn't detract from his looks. If anything, it added to the aura of danger that surrounded him like a second skin. "You're new," he said. Not a question. His voice was deeper than I'd expected, with just a trace of an Italian accent. "I've been here 6 months, sir," I corrected gently, immediately regretting my boldness. Something flickered in his expression. Surprise, perhaps, that I'd contradicted him. Then his mouth curved slightly, not quite a smile. 6 months, and we haven't met. One of his men shifted uncomfortably. I noticed they remained standing while he sat, positioned to see every corner of the restaurant. I believe you usually dine here on Thursdays, I explained. I normally work Monday through Wednesday. His eyebrow lifted slightly. You've noticed my schedule. Heat crept up my neck. The staff always prepares when you visit, Mr. Russo. He leaned back, studying me more carefully. I resisted the urge to step back, to wrap my arms protectively around my middle. Under the loose black apron, my baby shifted, as if sensing my discomfort. Your name? Elena Costello. Italian? He asked, his interest clearly piqued. On my mother's side, Napolitano. He nodded approvingly. The daily special, Elena from Napoli, and your recommendation for wine. I described the chef's special, a seafood risotto with saffron, and suggested a crisp white wine that would complement it. Throughout my recitation, his eyes never left my face, as if memorizing every feature. I felt stripped bare beneath his gaze, vulnerable in a way that had nothing to do with my pregnancy. As if he could see every lie I'd ever told, every fear I harbored. Perfect, he said finally, dismissing me with a slight nod. Relief washed over me as I retreated to place his order. In the kitchen, I leaned against the cool tile wall, breathing deeply to calm my racing heart. He asked for you specifically last time he was here, Marco said, appearing beside me with a tray of appetizers. But you weren't working. The information landed like a stone in my stomach. What? Why would he ask for me? Marco shrugged. Who knows why he does anything? Just keep him happy, Elena. We need him to keep coming back. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of service and increasing discomfort. The pains were coming more frequently now. Not contractions, I told myself firmly. Just Braxton Hicks, false labor. But by 11, when Russo's party was finishing their after-dinner drinks, I was struggling to maintain my composure. I approached their table with the check, every movement carefully controlled to hide my discomfort. As I placed the leather folder beside his hand, Russo looked up, his dark eyes narrowing. You're in pain, he stated flatly. I'm fine, sir, I said quickly. Too quickly. His eyes dropped to my midsection, then back to my face. For a terrifying moment, I thought he'd seen through my disguise, but he simply reached into his jacket and extracted a money clip thick with $100 bills. He placed several in the folder without checking the bill, then added another folded bill and handed it directly to me. For your excellent service, he said, his fingers brushing mine as I accepted it. The contact sent an unexpected shiver up my arm. His hand was warm and dry, his touch deliberately gentle despite the raw power evident in his frame. Our eyes met, and for an instant, something passed between us, a current of recognition I couldn't explain. Thank you, Mr. Russo. I tucked the folded bill into my apron pocket without looking at it. He stood, adjusting his cuffs, and I was struck by how much space he seemed to occupy, not just physically, but as if his presence expanded to fill the room. His security immediately moved into formation around him. Until next time, Elena from Napoli, he said, his voice low enough that only I could hear. I watched him leave, tension draining from my shoulders only when the restaurant door closed behind his entourage. When I finally checked the tip he'd left me, I gasped. $1,000, folded around a business card bearing only his name and a phone number. By the time I finished my shift, the pains were unmistakable. My water hadn't broken, but something was definitely happening. I changed in the employee restroom, my hands shaking as I removed my work clothes and pulled on a loose dress. The hospital bag I'd packed weeks ago waited in my locker, a precaution I'd taken despite having nearly a month until my due date. Outside, rain had begun to fall, turning the April night chilly and damp. I pulled my coat tighter around me, adjusting the strap of my hospital bag on my shoulder as I headed for the bus stop. The restaurant was in the upscale part of the city, but my apartment was a 45-minute bus ride away, in a neighborhood that grew more dangerous by the month. I couldn't afford better, not on a waitress's salary, not with a baby coming. The father of my child had disappeared the moment I'd told him about the pregnancy, cleaning out our shared bank account before vanishing. I later discovered he'd been involved with loan sharks and underground gambling, debts I knew nothing about until debt collectors started calling. I'd moved, changed my number, cut ties with our mutual friends, started over, alone. As I approached the bus stop, another pain gripped me, stronger than before. I gasped, clutching the metal pole for support. When it passed, I checked my phone. The last bus had left 10 minutes ago. I'd have to call a rideshare, an expense I couldn't really afford. Ms. Costello. The voice behind me sent ice through my veins. I turned slowly to find one of Russo's security men standing beside a black SUV with tinted windows. The vehicle was idling at the curb, its engine a quiet purr in the rainy night. "Mr. Russo noticed you might need assistance," the man said, his face expressionless. "He offers you a ride home." Through the open rear window, I could see Dante Russo watching me, his face half in shadow. Our eyes met across the rain-slicked street, and another pain chose that moment to tear through me. I doubled over, dropping my hospital bag. Its contents spilled onto the wet sidewalk. Prenatal vitamins, a nightgown, newborn diapers, and a tiny yellow onesie. For a moment, no one moved. Rain pattered on the scattered items, soaking the onesie. Then Russo was suddenly there, moving with surprising speed for such a large man. He knelt beside me, gathering my fallen belongings with his own hands, while his security watched in evident shock. When he picked up the tiny yellow onesie, his expression changed. He looked from the baby clothes to my face, then to my midsection where my coat had fallen open, revealing the unmistakable curve of late pregnancy. "You're with child," he said softly, the Italian accent thickening in his surprise. I couldn't speak, frozen in humiliation and fear. He held the onesie in his large hand, rubbing the soft fabric between his fingers. Something crossed his face, a complex emotion I couldn't identify. Then his eyes hardened as they met mine. "You lied to me," Russo said, his voice dangerously quiet. Before I could respond, another contraction seized me, more powerful than any before. I gasped, clutching my belly, suddenly certain that this baby was coming, ready or not. As my knees buckled, I felt strong arms catch me. The world tilted as Russo lifted me effortlessly. "Hospital," he commanded his men, carrying me toward the SUV. "Now." The last thing I saw before he placed me gently in the back seat was his face, hard as granite, but with eyes that burned with something that looked unsettlingly like possession. The interior of the SUV smelled of expensive leather and Russo's subtle cologne, sandalwood with hints of amber and spice. Rain drummed against the tinted windows as we pulled away from the curb, tires hissing on wet pavement. I clutched the edge of the seat, another contraction building. "Breathe," Russo instructed, his voice unexpectedly gentle. He sat beside me, closer than necessary in the spacious back seat, his security men in front. The driver navigated through late-night traffic with practiced efficiency, while the other man spoke quietly into a phone. "I'm fine," I managed, though the pain stealing my breath suggested otherwise. "This is just... Don't lie to me again." His tone was soft, but carried a warning that made me shiver. "You're in labor." I met his gaze, finding no room for argument in those dark eyes. "It's too early," I whispered. "Almost 4 weeks early." Something flickered across his face. "Concern? First child?" I nodded, another contraction preventing further response. This one lasted longer, the pain wrapping around my lower back like a vice. When it passed, I found Russo watching me intently, tracking the duration on an expensive watch. 8 minutes apart, he noted. "Regular. You seem knowledgeable about childbirth for a..." I stopped myself, suddenly aware of what I'd been about to say. His mouth curved slightly. "For a what, Elena? A criminal?" When I didn't answer, he continued. "I have 4 younger siblings. I was present for each birth." This glimpse into his personal life surprised me. I couldn't reconcile the image of a devoted brother with the man whispered about in fearful tones. Before I could respond, the security man in the passenger seat turned. "St. Mary's is closest, boss. 10 minutes. "No," I said sharply, earning surprised looks from both men. "Not St. Mary's. I'm registered at Metropolitan General." In truth, I couldn't afford St. Mary's private rooms and specialized care. Metropolitan's public ward was my only option with my limited insurance. Russo studied me for a moment, understanding dawning in his eyes. "Metropolitan's maternity ward is overcrowded and understaffed," he stated flatly. "St. Mary's. I can't afford..." "Money is not your concern." His tone brooked no argument. I wanted to protest, but another contraction stole my words. This one brought tears to my eyes, the pain sharper, more insistent. Without hesitation, Russo took my hand, offering it to me to squeeze. His palm was warm against mine, calloused in places I wouldn't have expected for a man who wore custom suits. "The father?" he asked when the contraction passed, his voice carefully neutral. I withdrew my hand from his, not in the picture. "His choice or yours?" "His. He left when he found out." I didn't know why I was telling him this, revealing my vulnerability to a man rumored to exploit any weakness. Perhaps it was the pain, or the strange intimacy of the moment. Being driven through rainy streets in his private car, while my body prepared to bring new life into the world. Russo's expression hardened, a muscle ticking in his jaw. His name? The question carried weight beyond simple curiosity. I recognized the dangerous undercurrent and chose my words carefully. "It doesn't matter. I haven't seen him in months. It matters," he said softly. "A man who abandons his child and their mother deserves consequences." A chill ran through me that had nothing to do with labor. I changed the subject. "Why are you helping me, Mr. Russo?" He looked out at the rain-slicked streets for a long moment before answering. "I have my reasons." The cryptic response should have frightened me, but strangely, it didn't. Despite his reputation and the obvious danger he represented, I felt safer in his presence than I had in months. Perhaps it was hormones clouding my judgment, or simply the relief of not facing labor alone. We arrived at St. Mary's private entrance, where a medical team awaited with a wheelchair. I later learned Russo had called ahead, ensuring the hospital's best obstetrician would be present despite the late hour. Everything moved quickly after that. Admission forms signed with a flourish by Russo himself, a private suite prepared, nurses checking my vitals and the baby's heartbeat. Through it all, Russo remained. He stationed his men outside my door and stayed within the room, his presence filling the space even when he stood silently by the window. Doctors and nurses treated him with deference, nobody questioning his right to be there. I was too caught up in the accelerating labor to protest. 6 centimeters dilated, the doctor announced after examining me. Moving faster than typical for a first birth. "The baby's okay?" I asked anxiously. "It's not too early. 36 weeks is considered late preterm," she reassured me. "The lungs are typically mature, but we'll have the NICU team standing by as a precaution." Another contraction gripped me, stronger than before. I cried out, unable to maintain my usual stoic facade. When it passed, I found Russo at my bedside, offering a cup of ice chips. "You should go," I told him, embarrassed by my disheveled state and the intimacy of the situation. "This could take hours." "I'll stay," he replied simply, as if it were already decided. "Why?" I demanded, frustration breaking through my composure. "You don't know me." His dark eyes held mine. "I know enough." Before I could question him further, the strongest contraction yet crashed over me. I gasped, clutching the bedrail. Without hesitation, Russo took my hand again, his strength anchoring me through the pain. Hours blurred together after that, pain building to nearly unbearable levels, nurses checking progress, Russo a constant presence by my side. He spoke little, but was attentive to every need, sometimes anticipating them before I could voice them. He wiped sweat from my brow with cool cloths, offered encouragement when I felt I couldn't continue, and never once showed discomfort at the raw, primal nature of childbirth. In the early hours of the morning, as dawn light began filtering through the window blinds, my daughter was born, small but perfect, with a strong cry that filled the room. The doctor placed her on my chest, her tiny body warm and wriggling against my skin. I stared in wonder at her face, her dark hair still damp, her eyes squeezed shut against the brightness of the world. "She's beautiful," I whispered, tears streaming down my face. "Hello, Sophia." I'd chosen the name months ago, after my grandmother, a woman of remarkable strength who had raised 5 children alone after being widowed young. Looking at my daughter's perfect face, I knew she would need that same strength. When I finally looked up from my newborn's face, I found Russo watching us with an expression I couldn't interpret, something raw and almost painful in his usually guarded features. Our eyes met over my daughter's head, and for a moment, something profound and unspoken passed between us. A nurse approached, asking if I wanted her to take the baby for measurements and tests. I nodded reluctantly, already feeling the ache of separation as she lifted Sophia from my arms. 5 pounds, 6 ounces, the nurse announced after weighing her. Small, but excellent weight for 36 weeks. As the medical team attended to Sophia, I became aware of my exhaustion, the room spinning slightly as fatigue caught up with me. Russo must have noticed because he was suddenly beside me, his hand steady on my shoulder. "Rest," he said quietly. "I'll watch over you both." I wanted to ask what he meant, to question why this dangerous man seemed so invested in me and my child, but darkness was already pulling me under. The last thing I saw before sleep claimed me was Dante Russo standing by the bassinet where they had placed my daughter, his powerful frame incongruous next to her tiny one, his expression softer than I'd thought possible for a man like him. I woke to sunlight streaming through windows and the quiet sounds of a newborn's snuffles. For a disoriented moment, I thought I was home, until the hospital room came into focus. Sophia was in a clear bassinet beside my bed, swaddled in a soft blanket, and there in the corner, Russo sat in an armchair, his jacket removed, shirt sleeves rolled up, watching us both. He didn't look like a man who had been awake all night. His composure was intact, though a shadow of stubble darkened his jaw. "Good morning," he said, rising smoothly. "The doctor says you both can leave tomorrow if all remains well." I struggled to sit up, wincing at the soreness that permeated my body. "You stayed all night?" "Of course." As if his presence at my childbirth were the most natural thing in the world. As if we weren't strangers connected by the thinnest of threads, a few restaurant interactions, and one rainy night. "Mr. Russo, Dante," he corrected. "After what we've shared, I think you've earned the right to use my first name." The intimacy of it struck me. In that moment, watching him move toward my child with such careful attention, I realized how thoroughly our lives had become entangled in the span of a single night. "Dante." I tested the name, finding it suited him. "I appreciate everything you've done, but I don't understand why. Why help me? Why stay?" He turned from the bassinet to face me fully, his expression serious. "When my mother died giving birth to my youngest sister, I made a promise that no woman in my territory would face childbirth alone if I could prevent it. The personal revelation stunned me. This wasn't what I'd expected, not charity or obligation, but something deeply personal. "I'm sorry about your mother," I said softly. He nodded once, accepting my sympathy, then continued. "But that's not the only reason, Elena." There was something in his voice that made my pulse quicken. He approached my bedside, his movements deliberate as a predator's. "From the moment I saw you at Bellini's 3 months ago, I've been watching you," he said, his voice low. "Trying to understand why I couldn't get you out of my thoughts." My heart raced. 3 months? But I only served you last night." A slight smile curved his mouth. "I come to Bellini's specifically to see you. When you weren't there on Thursdays, I started varying my visits. The revelation sent a shiver down my spine. Not entirely from fear. I struggled for words. Unsettling. It unsettled me as well, he admitted. I'm not a man accustomed to being distracted. A small cry from the bassinet interrupted whatever he might have said next. Instinctively, I moved to get up. But Dante was faster. With surprising gentleness, he lifted Sophia, supporting her head with practiced ease, and brought her to me. "She has your eyes," he observed as I took her, though her eyes were the unfocused dark blue of all newborns. As I cradled my daughter, the reality of my situation crashed over me. Tomorrow we would leave this hospital and return to my tiny apartment in a dangerous neighborhood, with barely enough savings to cover next month's rent. The future I'd imagined for us seemed suddenly precarious. Dante watched me, reading the worry on my face with unnerving accuracy. "Tell me about him," he said quietly. "The father." I looked down at Sophia, her tiny face peaceful in sleep. The question hung between us, heavy with implications I couldn't fully grasp. Something told me that whatever I revealed to Dante Russo about my past would set events in motion that couldn't be stopped. "His name was Michael," I finally said, my voice barely above a whisper. "Michael Reyes. We met at a coffee shop where I worked before Bellini's. He was charming, attentive. I paused, embarrassed by my own naivety. I thought he was in real estate. Dante's expression remained neutral, but his eyes sharpened at the name. Continue. We moved in together after 4 months. Too fast, I know now. I stroked Sophia's cheek with my finger, marveling at the softness of her skin. When I got pregnant, everything changed. He became distant, started staying out late. Then one night, 2 men came to our apartment looking for him. What kind of men? Dante asked, his tone casual but his posture alert. The kind with guns under their jackets. I swallowed hard at the memory. They said Michael owed their boss money. A lot of money. Dante's jaw tightened. And then? When I confronted him, he promised he'd fix everything. The next day, I woke up to an empty apartment and an empty bank account. The humiliation of those days still burned. He left a note saying I'd be better off without him, that he was in too deep. With whom? The question was soft but insistent. I hesitated. He never said specifically, but I found matchbooks from the Royal Flush Casino in his things. Something flickered in Dante's eyes. Recognition, and something darker. The Royal Flush was rumored to be owned by the Moretti family, Dante's chief rivals in the city's underworld, according to kitchen gossip at Bellini's. You've been alone since then? He asked. I nodded. I changed my number, moved across town, started over. Yeah, and the men who came looking for him? Never saw them again, I said. I assumed they were tracking Michael, not me. Dante stood and moved to the window, his back to me. Sunlight outlined his powerful frame, throwing his face into shadow. The debt doesn't disappear just because he ran, Elena. A cold fear settled in my stomach. What do you mean? He turned, his expression grave. The Moretti family doesn't forgive debts. If Michael borrowed from them, they consider that debt transferable to his family. But I'm not his family, I protested. We weren't married. Dante's gaze dropped to Sophia. You carry his child. To them, that's enough. The implication stole my breath. I pulled Sophia closer, protective instincts surging. Are you saying they might come after us? After my baby? It's a possibility you need to consider. He returned to my bedside, his presence both intimidating and reassuring. How much did he take? I swallowed hard. Almost $30,000. Our savings, plus a loan I'd taken out for a small business I wanted to start. Dante nodded, as if confirming something to himself. And how much do you think he owed? I don't know exactly. The men who came, they mentioned 6 figures. A muscle ticked in Dante's jaw. I need to make some calls. Will you be all right for a few minutes? The sudden shift in his demeanor, from intense focus on my story to business-like efficiency, left me disoriented. Yes, of course. He hesitated at the door. Elena, I want you to consider something. When you leave this hospital, you have options beyond returning to that apartment. Before I could ask what he meant, he was gone, the door closing quietly behind him. One of his security men remained visible through the small window, standing sentinel outside my room. I looked down at Sophia, sleeping peacefully in my arms, unaware of the complications surrounding her entry into the world. What have I gotten us into, little one? I whispered. A nurse came to check on us, helping me with Sophia's first feeding and showing me how to change her diaper. The normalcy of these actions grounded me, pushing thoughts of debt and danger to the background temporarily. By the time Dante returned an hour later, I had almost convinced myself that my fears were exaggerated. One look at his face erased that comforting fiction. What is it? I asked, immediately tense. Dante closed the door carefully before speaking. Michael Reyes borrowed $150,000 from the Moretti family 8 months ago. He lost most of it gambling at their casino, then tried to double his money with a cocaine deal that went bad. My stomach dropped. How do you know this? I have sources. He said it simply, a statement of fact. The Morettis have been looking for him. When they couldn't find him, they started looking for connections. They know about you, Elena, and now they know about the baby. Terror gripped me, my arms tightening instinctively around Sophia. What will they do? Dante sat on the edge of my bed, closer than before. They'll use you to draw him out if they can. If that fails, they might—" He hesitated, clearly weighing his words. "There are men in their organization who would consider the debt transferable to his child. That's insane," I whispered, horrified. "She's an innocent baby. The world we operate in isn't concerned with innocence." His voice was gentle but matter-of-fact. "It's about power, leverage, and example setting. We," I repeated, focusing on his choice of words. "The world we operate in. You're talking about yourself, too." He met my eyes directly. "Yes. I won't pretend to be something I'm not, Elena. But there are differences between the Moretti approach and mine." I swallowed hard. "What differences?" "I don't target innocence. I don't involve children in adult matters." His eyes were intense, willing me to believe him. "And I protect what's mine." The implication hung between us, unspoken, but clear. In some way I couldn't fully comprehend. He had decided that Sophia and I fell under that category. "Why?" I asked. The question that had been burning since he'd appeared outside Bellini's the night before. "Why would you consider us yours?" For the first time, I saw uncertainty cross Dante's face, a crack in his usual composure. He looked at Sophia, then back at me. "I lost my mother and nearly lost my sister in childbirth," he said slowly. "That creates a sensitivity." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "But with you, it's more than that. From the first time I saw you at Bellini's, your grace under pressure, your quiet strength, I felt drawn to you in a way I can't fully explain." The confession, delivered in his usual controlled manner, nonetheless revealed vulnerability I hadn't expected from him. "And now?" I pressed, needing clarity. "What happens now?" "Now I offer you protection," he said simply. "For you and Sophia." The way he said my daughter's name, with such care, sent a confusing warmth through me despite the circumstances. At what cost? Nothing came without strings in my experience. Something like approval flickered in his eyes at my directness. "No cost, Elena. This isn't a transaction." I laughed softly, disbelieving. "Everything's a transaction with men like—" I stopped myself. "Men like me?" he finished, not offended but curious. "You think you know what kind of man I am?" I met his gaze steadily. "I know your reputation. I've heard the whispers. Reputations serve purposes," he said cryptically. "But they rarely tell the whole truth." A nurse entered then, breaking the tension between us. She checked Sophia's vitals and mine, made notes in my chart, and informed us that the doctor would be by later to discuss our discharge tomorrow. When we were alone again, Dante moved to the window, giving me space. "You don't need to decide anything today," he said, his back to me. "Rest, recover, bond with your daughter. We'll talk more tomorrow." I was too exhausted to argue, the emotional and physical toll of the past 24 hours catching up with me. I dozed while Sophia slept in her bassinet, waking occasionally to feed her or simply stare in wonder at her perfect features. Through it all, Dante remained, sometimes sitting in the armchair reading messages on his phone, sometimes standing by the window in quiet contemplation. His security rotated shifts outside my door, a constant reminder of his power and reach. By evening, flowers had begun arriving. Tasteful arrangements from the hospital gift shop at first, then more elaborate bouquets from the city's most exclusive florist. No cards accompanied them, but I knew they were from Dante. The room gradually transformed into a fragrant garden, nurses commenting on the display with barely concealed curiosity about my mysterious benefactor. Dante left briefly around dinner time, returning with containers of homemade food that put the hospital offerings to shame. Delicate pasta in a light cream sauce, fresh bread, and a salad with ingredients so fresh they must have come from someone's private garden. "You need to keep up your strength," he explained, setting up the meal on the adjustable table across my bed. "Hospital food won't do that. You didn't have to." "I wanted to." He served me himself, then took a seat in the chair by my bed with his own portion. My mother always said food was medicine, especially for new mothers. We ate in surprisingly comfortable silence, the normalcy of sharing a meal creating a strange bubble of intimacy in the sterile hospital room. When Sophia began to fuss, Dante took my plate without being asked, allowing me to lift her from the bassinet. "May I hold her?" he asked after I'd soothed her, the request catching me off guard. I hesitated only briefly before nodding. With practiced ease that spoke of his experience with his siblings, Dante gathered Sophia into his arms, supporting her head perfectly. The contrast between his powerful frame and her tiny body was striking. His hand alone was nearly the size of her entire torso. Yet he held her with exquisite gentleness, studying her face with undisguised fascination. "She has your chin," he observed, "and your eyebrows. The doctor says her eye color might change, but I think they'll stay dark," I said, watching them together with a mixture of emotions I couldn't sort through, like yours. The observation slipped out before I could consider its implications. Dante looked up sharply, something unreadable flashing in his eyes. For a suspended moment, we stared at each other, the air between us charged with possibilities neither of us had voiced. Sophia broke the tension with a tiny sneeze that made us both smile. "Perfect," Dante murmured, looking back down at her. "Absolutely perfect." As night fell, a nurse brought a reclining chair for Dante when it became clear he intended to stay again. I should have felt uncomfortable with his continued presence, but instead found myself grateful. The thought of facing the night alone, especially after what he'd told me about the Morettis, was more frightening than having this dangerous man watching over us. After settling Sophia in her bassinet after a late feeding, I finally asked the question that had been building all day. "If I accept your protection, what exactly does that mean?" Dante, who had been looking at his phone, set it aside and gave me his full attention. "It means you and Sophia come to stay at my home until we resolve the situation with the Morettis and ensure your safety." "Your home," I repeated, the implications settling heavily. "I have a secure property outside the city, private, gated with excellent security." His tone was matter-of-fact, as if offering standard accommodations rather than entry into his personal space, a privilege I suspected few were granted. "You would have your own suite of rooms, complete privacy when you want it." "And Michael?" I couldn't help asking. "What happens if you find him?" Dante's expression hardened slightly. "He pays his debt, one way or another." The implicit threat should have horrified me. Instead, I felt a complicated mix of emotions. Concern for a man I had once loved, anger at his betrayal, and a disturbing relief that Dante seemed willing to handle a problem I couldn't solve alone. "I need time to think," I said finally. He nodded. "Of course. But Elena..." His eyes held mine with quiet intensity. "Time is a luxury you may not have much of." Morning arrived with soft golden light filtering through the window blinds and the gentle sounds of Sophia stirring in her bassinet. I blinked away sleep, momentarily disoriented until the hospital room came into focus. My gaze immediately sought Dante, finding him standing by the window, phone pressed to his ear as he spoke in hushed Italian. His suit was different. Someone must have brought him fresh clothes overnight. When he noticed I was awake, he ended his call and approached the bed. "Good morning," he said, his deep voice soft in deference to Sophia. "The doctor will be by soon to discuss discharge. How are you feeling?" "Sore. Tired." I pushed myself up, wincing at the lingering pain, but better than yesterday. He nodded, studying me with those penetrating eyes that seemed to see more than I wanted to reveal. "You've made a decision." It wasn't a question, but I answered anyway. "Yes." Before I could elaborate, a nurse entered to check my vitals and help me to the bathroom. By the time I emerged, freshly washed and changed into clean pajamas that had mysteriously appeared overnight, certainly not the worn nightgown from my hospital bag, Sophia was being examined by a pediatrician. Dante stood nearby, watchful as the doctor gently assessed my daughter. "She's doing wonderfully," the pediatrician announced, smiling as she swaddled Sophia back into her blanket. "Excellent muscle tone, strong reflexes, and she's already regained her birth weight, which is unusual, but very good news for a late preterm baby." Relief washed over me. The past 36 hours had been so consumed with unexpected developments that I'd had little time to worry about the medical aspects of Sophia's early arrival. "So we can go home today?" I asked, careful not to look at Dante as I said home, the word now loaded with unspoken complexity. "Yes. I'll sign the discharge papers this morning. Do you have an infant car seat installed?" Before I could admit that I hadn't yet purchased one, It had been next month's planned expense. Dante spoke. "Everything is arranged," he said with quiet authority. "The car seat was installed yesterday." The doctor nodded, apparently unsurprised by his involvement. As she left, my obstetrician arrived, confirming that I, too, was cleared for discharge. Through it all, Dante remained a commanding presence in the room, answering questions when appropriate, but mostly observing with the focus of a man accustomed to controlling his environment. When we were finally alone again, I cradled Sophia against my chest, gathering courage for what I needed to say. "I'll accept your protection," I began, meeting his gaze directly. "But I need to understand exactly what I'm agreeing to. I need parameters." Something like respect flickered in his eyes. "Of course. I won't be kept prisoner, even in a gilded cage. Sophia and I will stay with you temporarily, until this situation with the Morettis is resolved. But I maintain my independence. I keep my job at Bellini's." "Absolutely not," he interrupted, his tone brooking no argument. "Bellini's is too public, too exposed. The Morettis know you work there." I bristled at his commanding tone but couldn't deny the logic. "Fine, but I need to work. I can't just—" "You've just given birth," he countered, softening his approach. "Take time with your daughter. When you're ready to work again, we can discuss options that don't compromise your safety." The reasonableness of this made it difficult to argue. "All right, but I won't be financially dependent on you." A smile ghosted across his lips. "Stubborn," he observed, not unkindly. "What else?" "I make my own decisions about Sophia. Her care, her future, everything." "Of course. She's your daughter." The immediate agreement should have reassured me, but something in his expression, a shadow of possessiveness, gave me pause. "And when this is over," I continued, "when the danger has passed, Sophia and I will be free to leave. No strings attached." This stipulation produced a visible reaction, a tightening around his eyes, a momentary tension in his shoulders. "You'll be free to make your own choices," he said carefully, "but Elena, I hope by then you'll have reconsidered what you want." The implications hung between us, unspoken but clear. This arrangement might begin as protection, but Dante expected, it to evolve into something else. "One more thing," I said, choosing to sidestep the dangerous territory his words had opened. "I want complete honesty, no secrets about the situation with the Morettis or Michael. I need to know what's happening, what the dangers are." This request seemed to surprise him. Most people prefer not to know the details of my business. I'm not most people. I held his gaze steadily, and this involves my child's safety. I won't be kept in the dark. A slow smile spread across his face, transforming his features from intimidating to almost boyishly charming. "No, you certainly aren't most people." He considered for a moment, then nodded. "Honesty, then, though there may be times when partial information is safer." It wasn't a complete victory, but it was more than I'd expected. I extended my hand formally, feeling oddly like I was signing a contract with the devil, a very well-dressed, unexpectedly gentle devil. "We have a deal." Dante took my hand, but instead of shaking it, he turned it over and pressed his lips to my inner wrist, just above my pulse point. The gesture was old world, courtly, yet intimate in a way that sent heat rushing to my face. "We have a deal," he agreed, releasing my hand slowly. The remainder of the morning passed in a whirlwind of discharge paperwork, instructions for postpartum care, and preparations to leave. A hospital aide arrived with a wheelchair, standard protocol for discharge despite my insistence that I could walk. As the aide pushed me toward the exit, Sophia bundled securely in my arms, I was struck by the surreal nature of the situation. 3 days ago, I had been a pregnant waitress with a precarious future, alone and afraid. Now I was leaving the hospital with my newborn daughter and a Mafia boss who had, for reasons I still couldn't fully comprehend, appointed himself our protector. Outside, a sleek black Mercedes waited at the curb, not the SUV from before. One of Dante's security men opened the rear door, revealing a top-of-the-line infant car seat already installed. With experienced hands, Dante helped me secure Sophia in the seat, checking the straps with meticulous attention. "Your things have been collected from your apartment," he informed me as we pulled away from the hospital. Personal items, clothing, anything for the baby. Is there anything specific you're concerned about? The casual mention of having entered my apartment without permission should have angered me, but I found myself too exhausted to protest. My mother's jewelry box, it's hidden in the loose floorboard under the bed, he finished, nodding. We found it. It's secure. I stared at him, unsettled by his thoroughness. How did you know where to look? I employ careful people. He met my eyes, his expression softening slightly at whatever he saw in my face. Nothing was disturbed more than necessary, Elena, and the jewelry box is untouched. The city fell away as we drove, urban density gradually giving way to affluent suburbs, then to winding roads bordered by manicured woodland. After nearly an hour, we turned onto a private drive marked only by discrete stone pillars. A high wall bordered the property, with security cameras visible at regular intervals. We passed through an imposing gate that opened automatically as we approached, then closed immediately behind us. The house, mansion would be more accurate, came into view as we rounded a curve in the long driveway. Built of pale stone with a slate roof, it sprawled elegantly across manicured grounds, looking like something from a European estate rather than a residence 30 miles outside the city. Fountains played in formal gardens, and I glimpsed a swimming pool glittering in the distance. This is where you live? I couldn't keep the awe from my voice. One of my residences, Dante replied. The most secure one. The car stopped at the front entrance, where a woman in her 60s waited on the steps, dressed simply but elegantly in a navy dress, her silver-streaked dark hair pulled back in a neat bun. She had the bearing of someone comfortable in her authority. That's Rosa, Dante explained, as the driver opened my door. She's been with my family since before I was born. She runs the household. Rosa approached as Dante helped me from the car, her keen eyes taking in every detail of my appearance before shifting to Sophia. "Ah, the little one," she said, her accent heavier than Dante's. "Beautiful." She turned to me with a warm smile that transformed her stern features. "Welcome, Miss Elena. Everything is prepared for you and the bambina." I murmured thanks, unsure of the proper protocol. Was she staff? Family? The line seemed blurred in Dante's world. "Rosa will show you to your rooms," Dante said, carefully lifting Sophia's car seat. "I have some business to attend to, but I'll join you for dinner if you're feeling up to it." The transition from his constant presence over the past 2 days to this sudden distance left me oddly bereft. Before I could respond, he handed Sophia to Rosa with clear instructions about her care, then nodded to me and disappeared through massive double doors, flanked by one of his security men. Rosa, seeing my expression, patted my arm. "He has been very worried, very busy making arrangements. Come, you must rest." She led me through an entrance hall with soaring ceilings and marble floors into a wing of the house that felt slightly less formal. The rooms Dante had mentioned turned out to be an entire suite, a sitting room decorated in soothing blues and creams, a bedroom with an enormous 4-poster bed, a luxurious bathroom with a soaking tub, and, most surprisingly, a fully furnished nursery connecting to my bedroom. I stopped in the doorway of the nursery, stunned. Everything was brand new and of obvious quality. A cherry wood crib with delicate bedding, a matching changing table stocked with supplies, a rocking chair beside a window overlooking gardens, and shelves filled with books and stuffed animals. When did he... I couldn't finish the question, overwhelmed by the implications. Rosa smiled, gently placing Sophia in the crib. "Mr. Russo made the calls from the hospital yesterday morning. The designers worked through the night." She adjusted Sophia's blanket with practiced hands. "He wanted everything perfect for you both." I sank into the rocking chair, suddenly lightheaded. The speed and thoroughness with which Dante had integrated us into his life was both touching and terrifying. This wasn't mere protection. It was absorption. "You should rest while the little one sleeps," Rosa advised, practical and kind. "There's a monitor beside your bed. I'll bring tea and something light to eat." Left alone, I wandered back to the bedroom, where I found my few possessions already unpacked and arranged. The worn duffel bag I'd used for years was nowhere in sight, replaced by an elegant wardrobe filled with my familiar clothes, alongside items I'd never seen before. new garments with designer labels still attached, too exhausted to process it all. I lay down on the cloud-soft bed, intending only to close my eyes for a moment. I woke hours later to Sophia's hungry cries through the monitor. Disoriented in the unfamiliar room, it took me a moment to remember where I was and how I'd gotten there. The reality of my new situation settled over me as I lifted Sophia from the crib and settled in the rocking chair to feed her. I had entered Dante Russo's world, a world of wealth, power, and danger I scarcely comprehended. In trying to protect my daughter from one threat, I had aligned myself with a man who represented an entirely different kind of danger. Not to our physical safety, perhaps, but to my independence, my future plans, and most alarmingly, my heart. As Sophia nursed contentedly, oblivious to the complexities surrounding her, I gazed out at the manicured gardens bathed in late afternoon light and wondered what price we would ultimately pay for Dante Russo's protection. Days at Dante's estate blended together in a haze of newborn care and gradual recovery. I settled into a routine dictated by Sophia's needs, feeding, changing, short periods of sleep when she allowed it. Rosa proved invaluable, offering guidance without overstepping and giving me space to bond with my daughter. I learned she had raised Dante after his mother's death, a relationship that explained his unwavering trust in her. Dante himself remained a complex presence, intensely involved yet maintaining careful distance. He joined us for dinner each evening in a sun-filled conservatory, where conversation flowed more easily than I'd expected. He asked thoughtful questions about my background, my dreams before life had complicated them, listening with genuine interest to stories of my childhood in a small coastal town, my move to the city for college, the small cafe I'd hoped to open someday. A cafe specializing in Italian pastries, he mused one evening, a week after our arrival. Your grandmother's recipes, you said. I nodded, surprised he'd remembered that detail from a conversation days earlier. She was from a small village outside Naples. Her sfogliatelle was famous in our hometown. You should write down her recipes, he suggested, before they're lost. The simple encouragement touched me unexpectedly. In Michael's presence, my culinary ambitions had always seemed secondary, something to pursue eventually after his career was established. Dante's immediate validation felt like water on parched soil. True to our agreement, he kept me informed about the search for Michael and the situation with the Morettis. Each update was delivered factually, without unnecessary details, but with enough information that I understood the evolving threats. My men traced Michael to Miami 3 days ago, he informed me on our 10th day at the estate, joining me on the terrace where I was enjoying morning sunshine while Sophia slept in a bassinet beside me. He's working as a bartender at a beach club under the name Miguel Rodriguez. Florida, I said softly, memories of Michael's endless talk about retiring to Miami someday suddenly taking on new meaning. Has he been there the whole time? No. He went to Las Vegas first, trying to win back what he'd lost. Dante's expression hardened. He failed spectacularly, doubling his debt to the Morettis through their Vegas connections. The revelation shouldn't have hurt. Michael had shown his true colors when he abandoned us, but it did. Not because I still loved him, but because his recklessness continued to endanger our daughter. What will you do? I asked, meeting Dante's eyes directly. What do you want me to do? The question startled me. I had assumed Dante would handle Michael according to the rules of his world, not consult me. The power he placed in my hands felt weighty and unexpected. I want him to take responsibility, I said finally, for the debt, for abandoning us. But I don't want... I stopped, unsure how to phrase my concern without sounding accusatory. You don't want him dead, Dante finished, no judgment in his tone. No. Despite everything, he's Sophia's father. Dante's jaw tightened momentarily at the reminder, but he nodded. Then I'll give him a choice. Pay his debt in full, or work it off under my supervision. He'll never agree to work for you. A smile touched Dante's lips, cold and certain. He'll agree when the alternative is the Morettis' solution. I shivered despite the warm morning. 2 weeks in Dante's world had taught me enough to know what that meant. 3 days later, I woke from an afternoon nap to find Dante standing in my bedroom doorway. watching me with an intensity that made my pulse quicken. "What is it?" I asked, sitting up quickly. "Is it Sophia?" "She's fine. Rosa took her for a walk in the gardens." He entered the room fully, elegant as always in a tailored suit despite the weekend. "We found surveillance equipment in your old apartment. The Morettis have been watching for your return." Fear, sharp and cold, sliced through me. "They know about Sophia?" "Yes, and they know you're under my protection now." "Is that better or worse?" "Complicated," Dante admitted, sitting beside me on the bed, close enough that I could smell his cologne. "The Moretti patriarch and I have an understanding. We don't directly target each other's operations, but he views Michael's debt as his business, not mine." "And me? Sophia? What are we to you that would make him hesitate?" The question had been building since that first night, and now it spilled out, demanding clarity. Dante reached for my hand, his touch surprisingly gentle for a man capable of such violence. "You know what you are to me, Elena." "No," I challenged, newfound courage rising from maternal protectiveness. "I don't. Tell me." He studied our joined hands, thumb brushing my wrist where my pulse raced. "From the moment I saw you at Bellini's, something in me recognized something in you. A resilience, a quiet power." His eyes met mine, dark and intent. "I've built my life around recognizing value others miss. I'm not a business acquisition," I said sharply. "No, you're far more precious." His directness was breathtaking. "I've never believed in fate, Elena. I believe in seeing opportunities and seizing them. But with you—" He paused, seeming to search for words, unusual for a man so articulate. "With you, I felt something I cannot explain, a certainty." "About what?" "That you belong in my life, that I belong in yours." He lifted my hand, pressed his lips to my knuckles. "That Sophia deserves a father who would die to protect her, not one who abandoned her before birth." The declaration hung between us, its implications staggering. Not just protection, not just attraction, but a future, a family. The boldness of his vision should have frightened me. But after weeks in his presence, witnessing his unwavering commitment, his gentle interactions with Sophia, the glimpses of the man beneath the powerful exterior, fear wasn't what I felt. "Dante," I began, uncertain how to respond to such certainty when my own feelings remained complicated. The moment shattered as his phone rang. He answered tersely, listening for a moment before his expression darkened. "Bring him," he ordered, ending the call. "What is it?" I asked, immediately tense. "Michael Reyes has been found. He's being brought here." Dante stood, straightening his jacket. "He'll arrive within the hour." "Here? You're bringing him here?" Panic fluttered in my chest. "But Sophia will remain with Rosa in the East Wing, far from where I'll conduct this business," he assured me. "You have a choice, Elena. You can be present when I speak with him, or you can distance yourself entirely." I thought of Michael, his easy smile, his passionate declarations of love, his final betrayal. "I want to see him," I decided. "I need to." Dante nodded, unsurprised. "Then dress. I'll send Gianna to help you." An hour later, I sat in Dante's study wearing a simple black dress Gianna had selected from my new wardrobe. The room reflected its owner, masculine but refined, with leather-bound books lining the walls and a massive desk dominating the space. I perched on a leather sofa, Dante standing protectively beside me as the door opened. Michael looked smaller than I remembered, thinner and deeply tanned from the Florida sun. His eyes widened in shock when he saw me. "Elena?" He took a step forward, halting when Dante shifted slightly. "What are you doing here? Are you okay? Did he hurt you?" The concern in his voice, after months of silence, ignited a fury I hadn't realized I was harboring. "Did he hurt me?" I repeated, voice trembling. "No, Michael. He's the one who was there when our daughter was born 3 weeks ago. He's the one who protected us when the Morettis came looking for payment of your debts." Michael paled visibly. "Daughter? We have a daughter?" "Her name is Sophia," I said coldly. "She's beautiful and perfect, and she deserves better than a father who abandoned her before she was born." Shame crossed his face, quickly replaced by defiance. I left to protect you. The Morettis would have killed me. Killed us both. You left to save yourself, Dante interjected, his voice dangerously soft, taking her money in the process. Michael's eyes darted between us, calculation replacing shame. What is this? Are you two together? Bitterness twisted his features. Jesus, Elena. I've been gone, 7 months? And you're already shacking up with Russo? I flinched at the crudeness, but Dante remained impassive. Your opinion is irrelevant, he told Michael. What matters is resolving your debt. You owe the Morettis $300,000 now, with interest. Michael's face crumpled. I can't pay that. I've got nothing. That's why I ran. You have 2 options, Dante continued, as if he hadn't spoken. Option 1. I pay your debt to the Morettis. In exchange, you work for me for 5 years under strict supervision, in my legitimate businesses. You'll receive a salary, part of which will go toward repaying me. You'll sign legal documents relinquishing all parental rights to Sophia, though Elena may permit supervised visits in the future if she chooses. Michael stared, stunned by the unexpected offer. And option 2? I return you to the Morettis with my apologies for interfering in their business. The color drained from Michael's face. They'll kill me. Yes, Dante agreed simply. They will. Some choice, Michael muttered. More than you gave Elena when you emptied her bank account and disappeared. The reminder silenced him. He looked at me. Really looked, for the first time since entering. I'm sorry, Elena. I never meant for any of this to happen. I studied the man I'd once believed I loved, searching for the charming, passionate person who had swept me off my feet. All I saw was weakness masked by bravado, selfishness disguised as charm. I forgive you, Michael, I said quietly, surprising myself with the truth of it. Not for your sake, but for mine. And for Sophia's. I don't want to carry this anger. Tears welled in his eyes, whether from genuine remorse or self-pity, I couldn't tell. Would you let me see her? Just once? I hesitated, looking to Dante. His expression remained neutral, leaving the decision entirely to me. After you've signed the papers, I decided. One supervised visit before you start working for Dante. After that, we'll see. Relief washed over Michael's face. Thank you. And I'll take the deal, he told Dante. I'm not stupid. Debatable, Dante replied dryly, gesturing to one of his men. Lorenzo will take you to review the paperwork. After Michael was escorted out, I remained seated, emotions churning. Dante knelt before me, taking both my hands in his. You are magnificent, he said softly. Stronger than he deserved. I feel free, I realized, the weight of anger and hurt lifting like mist in morning sunlight. Like the last piece of my old life is finally resolved, Dante's eyes held mine, more openly vulnerable than I'd ever seen them. Are you ready to begin your new life, then? The question carried weight beyond the immediate moment. I thought of the past weeks, of Dante's unwavering support, his respectful distance, the way he looked at Sophia with such tenderness. I thought of his confession earlier, the certainty with which he'd claimed a place in our future. I'm not sure I'm ready for everything you want, I admitted honestly. I can be patient, he replied, a smile touching his lips. I've built empires, Elena. I know that lasting foundations take time. The metaphor wasn't lost on me. And what are you building with us? A family. He said it simply, the word carrying a depth of meaning that resonated through me, something neither of us has had for too long. I leaned forward impulsively, pressing my lips to his. The kiss was gentle at first, exploratory, but quickly deepened as Dante responded with carefully restrained passion. When we parted, both slightly breathless, I saw in his eyes a mirror of my own emotions, desire, hope, and cautious joy. One day at a time, I suggested, smiling as he tucked a strand of hair behind my ear. We'll build it together, one day at a time. Together, he agreed, sealing the promise with another kiss. 3 months later, I stood in the kitchen of Dante's city penthouse, our penthouse now, putting the finishing touches on a tray of sfogliatelle. My grandmother's recipes, carefully transcribed in a leather-bound book Dante had given me, had become the foundation for my new project, a small cafe in a building he owned downtown, set to open in the spring. Sophia slept peacefully in her bassinet nearby, growing stronger and more beautiful every day. From the living room came the low murmur of Dante's voice as he conducted business over the phone. His empire continued, but with subtle changes, more legitimate ventures, fewer shadows. For Sophia's future, he'd explained. For our family. The Moretti situation had been resolved through a complex negotiation I wasn't privy to, though I suspected it involved territorial concessions on Dante's part. Michael was working at one of Dante's shipping companies in another state, his debt being paid through honest labor. He'd seen Sophia twice, briefly. His interest already waning as the reality of fatherhood proved less appealing than the idea of it. I slid the pastries into the oven, filled with a contentment I'd never imagined possible when I'd first felt those labor pains at Bellini's. Life with Dante wasn't simple. Nothing about loving a man of his complexity and power could ever be simple. But it was rich with possibility, secure in a way I'd never known. When strong arms encircled my waist from behind, I leaned back against Dante's chest, savoring his solid presence. "Smells like heaven," he murmured, pressing a kiss to my neck. "My grandmother's recipe," I replied, turning in his embrace. "The first thing I'll serve when the cafe opens." His smile, still rare enough to be precious, warmed his entire face. "She would be proud of you, as I am." "Even though I still insist on working, on having my own business?" I teased, though the question had once held real concern. "Especially because of that," he answered seriously. "Your strength, your independence. These are what drew me to you, Elena. I never wanted to diminish them, only to protect them. To protect you." I touched his face, tracing the scar that had once seemed so intimidating. Now it was simply part of him, the man who had become my unexpected harbor in life's storm. "You've given us so much," I whispered. "Safety. A future. A home." Dante shook his head, gathering me closer. "You've given me more. A family. A heart I thought I'd lost years ago." He looked toward Sophia, his expression softening. "A reason to be better than I was." From the bassinet came a small sound, the beginning of Sophia's wake-up routine. We moved together to lift her, Dante's large hands gentle as he cradled her against his chest. Looking at them, this powerful man and the tiny girl he adored, I felt the final pieces of my heart click into place. My life had taken an unexpected turn that rainy night outside Bellini's, when a Mafia boss had discovered my secret. What had begun in fear had transformed into something I never could have imagined. A love built on respect and honesty. A partnership of equals despite our different worlds. Sophia reached up, tiny fingers grasping Dante's, and his face transformed with joy. I leaned against them both, embracing the truth I'd finally accepted. Sometimes the most unexpected beginnings lead to the most beautiful endings. Or perhaps, I thought, as Dante's arm wrapped around me, drawing me into their embrace, not an ending at all, but the start of our greatest chapter.